It is nice when a plan comes together, and for the Winnipeg Jets, the plan for the playoffs is seemingly within reach. After having a couple of months where the Jets didn't really know what was going on, suddenly Winnipeg is getting hot at the exact right time. They have now defeated the San Jose Sharks 6-2, putting them just 1 point out of a clinched playoff berth. We'll dive into the game against the Sharks and how the Jets can round out their season for the playoffs on tonight's episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets.
You're Locked On the Hockey Jets, your daily podcast on the Winnipeg Jets. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, friends, and welcome to tonight's episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Harrison Lee, an avid Winnipeg Jets fan and an online blogger. You can follow me on Twitter at HLLivingLoco and at LO_Winnipeg Jets. As always, thanks for making Locked On Jets your first listen of the day, every day. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to like, follow, and subscribe on all of your favorite podcasting platforms and YouTube. Doing so is, of course, free of charge, and, naturally, we just really love and appreciate your support. Tonight's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more and visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. Now, like I said, obviously the Jets have had a big slate of games recently, and after a massive must-win game over the weekend against the Nashville Predators, suddenly the Jets found themselves in control of their own playoff destiny. How sweet is that? I know that being in the second wild card spot and kind of backing your butt into the playoffs isn't exactly the most impressive way to do it. Let's be real, right? The Jets squandered second place in the Central Division. They had a shot at winning the division earlier this year, and ever since then, it's been a bit of a downward spiral. But suddenly, the Jets are starting to finally get a little bit of positive regression in their finishing ability. Pucks going back, into the back of the net a little more frequently. Vibes are returning. Hellebuck is looking pretty decent for the most part. Things are feeling a lot less grim. And everything is feeling even better now that the Jets have beat the San Jose Sharks, a team that has, for the past couple of weeks, really haunted Winnipeg. We had that overtime loss. We had, the shutout loss to Reimer, not too long after that. This time, I was wondering, could the Jets rally and find a way to get past Reimer and their own, personal problems with this Sharks team? I don't know why Winnipeg has struggled against them this year, but for some reason, San Jose has had Winnipeg's number recently. This time, though, the Jets completely and utterly dismantled them. This was, from the ground up, a pretty thorough demolition. I know San Jose scored a goal early, and actually, Erik Karlsson bagged himself a brace on the evening. Hard to really be upset about Karlsson scoring a couple of goals. He became just, the sixth defender in NHL history to record a 100-point season, so congrats to Erik. But obviously, for us, that's not really the most important part. The Jets are now 1 point away from a postseason berth. But in this game, you might be wondering, well, the Jets won 6-2. How exactly did they get through with this, right? Who's scoring and how did they pull it off? Surprisingly, Winnipeg's bottom six played a role, and it was more specifically like the third line. I feel like the line of Niederreiter, Lowry, and Appleton was everywhere tonight. I know that they only accounted for a couple of goals, but when they were out there, I just felt like they were tilting the ice positively in Winnipeg's favor. I think the thing with this unit typically that we see is that guys like Lowry, and Appleton, they don't always have the best shooting angles. Sometimes they stuff it into pads, and Niederreiter hasn't exactly been as effective in this role as you'd hope, right? He's not bad. It's just, I think if he was in a more top six role, we might see a little more out of him. But alongside Lowry and Appleton, it is what it is. I was kind of hoping that at some point this unit would do something helpful for the Jets, and they picked a really freaking good time to have a monster game. Appleton had a great assist on, I believe it was a Lowry goal, and then Appleton himself scored later in the game in the third period. Lowry, of course, bagging his 12th goal of the season. Finally starting to hit pay dirt a little more frequently after basically not scoring for 12 or 15 games or something. He'd gone a long time without a goal, which for a guy being paid a decent chunk of money for a third line center role, not really what you want to see. But it is what it is. We're going to kind of look past that. Aside from those guys, obviously Winnipeg's top six played a pretty prominent role in the scoring. Dubois got on the sheet. Connor scored. We also had Josh Morrissey and Mark Scheifele scoring. A couple of power play goals, actually, if you can believe it. I know it's not the most important takeaway, but I thought the power play with the Ehlers looked a lot more dangerous, a lot more active, and a lot less static, which is good because when the Jets' power play is static, Winnipeg does tend to not score. So the power play looking a little better. Ehlers, I think, has been a really big blessing for that unit, which a lot of people have been advocating for months, maybe even years now. But at least he's finally getting this chance to run free a little bit. But overall, major impression from this game is that the Jets just took care of business. I know that it sounds really stupid and very silly when you're talking about a Jets team going against a squad that is tanking for Bedard. But look, right, Jets the past few months, it's not been feeling very positive. Things have kind of been backsliding. So if there's a win that you can have, even if it's against a lower ranked opponent, a team that's really kind of, scuffling uphill for a major lotto pick, yeah, I mean, you just got to do it. You got to take care of business and put yourself in the best chances to make the postseason. And Winnipeg has. This has been a massive win, and it now puts the Jets within 1 point. That 1 point is now going to have to come on the road, though, against either Minnesota or Colorado. And honestly, the game against the Wild is going to be really tough. For a game that's a back-to-back. Today, actually, as you're listening to this, Winnipeg is likely getting ready to practice and head out and do some stuff as the game is this evening. It's pretending to be a really, really big matchup for the Jets. And hopefully Winnipeg can at least scrap out a single point. That's all they need, just a point. If they can't win, I mean, it is what it is, but preferably get the victory in regulation, walk home victors, and enjoy a nice evening in Colorado to close out the regular season. We'll dive into how the Jets can accomplish this and what I expect to happen over the next few days in just a little bit. But before we go any further, I do want to shout out our friends and partners at FanDuel. Grand slams, no-hitters, and double plays are back, and there's no better place to get in on the MLB action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can step up to the plate with a no-sweat first bet of up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet does not win. All you have to do is go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up, place your first bet, and get up to $1,000 back in bonus bets. Again, bonus bets if you do not win. You might be interested in how many homers Aaron Judge is going to follow up after a massive year last year, or maybe you think the Orioles are going to make the playoffs. Perhaps you're a Jays fan and you're thinking this might be Toronto's year for a World Series. No matter what you want to place your bet on, FanDuel has you covered with a safe, secure, and super easy-to-use app, and they also feature same-game parlays, so you can take a shot at a bigger payout. Don't miss your chance to get a no-sweat first bet of up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. FanDuel, official partner of the Major League Baseball. Hello, friends, and welcome back to this episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are, just happily recapping Winnipeg versus San Jose. Massive game, massive win. Jets got business taken care of. Everyone's smiling, everyone's happy. Vibes are positive, especially because the Jets only need 1 point. Just one. Now, the challenge is that point's going to have to come against two very, very good teams, and one of them, the Jets are going to play this evening on the road in Minnesota. The Wild are a very, very tough team, and I think we've known this for a while. We've seen how the Jets have played Minnesota. It's not gone well, right? Every time this Jets team faces Minnesota this year, it's not really been a super great return. Their last meeting was March 8th, and the Jets lost 4-2, so that's not ideal. I forget if Winnipeg has actually beaten them this year. They beat Winnipeg again December of last year, 4-1, and earlier this season, the Jets lost 6-1. So Winnipeg's record against the Wild this year has not been very good. But the good news is the Jets don't actually have to beat Minnesota. All they have to do is get a point. That's all you have to go for, right? Just get to overtime, and the rest will take care of itself. Now, Minnesota recently has been pretty darn effective. They've had some very close games against very good opponents. They beat the Wild, or they beat the Devils recently in overtime. They beat, who else? The Kraken. They've also lost a couple of games. They've lost to the Golden Knights twice, and they did lose to the Penguins. But for the most part, this Wild team has been pretty darn good. Gustafsson in net, I think, has been, for me, one of the biggest changes to this Wild roster. I think, that trade was very underrated, but at the time, I was kind of surprised that like Cam Talbot got swapped for Gustafsson, because Gustafsson's underlying numbers for the Sens seemingly looked like a bona fide starter, somebody who was maybe being masked a little bit by the very poor defensive play in front of him, but a guy who I thought could become their goalie of the present and future. But instead, they traded for Cam Talbot to do some cap maintenance and stuff, and I think that move has backfired because Gustafsson has kind of been killing it for Minnesota. The Wild, this is going to be a tough game, right? But a winnable one in some ways. I don't know what Minnesota is going to be doing, if they're even playing for anything at this point. I think at this stage, the standings are basically locked in. I don't think Minnesota really has any chance at winning the division. Actually, that's not true. They actually do have a very narrow chance to win the division, just because Colorado and Dallas are tied for 104 points. Minnesota has 102. So let me walk that back. They can actually come away with the division title, which would also help their playoff seeding if they want to go that route. But I think the tough thing for Minnesota and Dallas as well is that the Avs have a game in hand. So all that said, I just, again, I don't know if Minnesota is really going to be playing for a lot in this game tomorrow, or I guess, in your case, you're hearing this tomorrow. My tomorrow, it's actually Tuesday. So all I know is that the Jets have a chance to essentially see off the season, clinch a playoff berth, and do it before they go to Colorado. I think if the Jets have to go into Avs territory and pull off a point there, I think that is a lot more difficult. Now, assuming that the Jets actually lose this game, obviously that's not super ideal for Winnipeg. Doubly so if they actually fall to the Avs as well. But I guess the positive spin is that Nashville would have to win out, and Nashville also plays both the Wild and the Avs. So unless Nashville suddenly has a big turnaround in form in their last two games, which are going to be at home, I don't know if the Jets are really that concerned. Winnipeg really just needs that extra point, and everything is golden. If they can't get it, then just hope that Nashville loses all of their remaining games, and the Jets should be through. But yeah, preferably take care of business on your own turf, get it done, and, it is what it is. If the Jets make the playoffs, awesome. If not, I'll be disappointed and kind of upset, but, it is what it is. I've stopped getting particularly mad or sad or anything about this team when they mess up and make mistakes, because they do a lot, so you might as well just kind of ride with the wave at this point and hope that at some point down the road, this team kind of turns things around and has a more sustainable path towards victory. But in the meantime, the Jets are going to have to get through a couple of really tough games, and then it's playoff time. And for the Jets, let's just say that they got some not so great news as it pertains to one of the teams that they are likely to face if everything holds and LA actually ends up defeating Vegas, right? So the Golden Knights, this is Winnipeg's likely opponent. All I can say is it's going to be a really tough series, and the announcement of a certain returning player puts a lot of pressure on the Jets. We'll dive into who this is and how he can shape the series against Winnipeg in just a little bit. Hello, friends, and welcome back to these closing thoughts on tonight's episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. We're just wrapping up really quickly with some thoughts ahead of Winnipeg's potential playoff matchups. Obviously, the Jets are in the second wildcard spot, so they are currently projected to face the Pacific Division winner, which would be the Vegas Golden Knights. It could be the Oilers if Edmonton somehow rallies and Vegas ends up faltering a little bit down here in the final stretch, but I would anticipate the Knights being the team the Jets face. I don't know if that is, more preferable or less preferable than going against Edmonton. The Oilers' offense is flying really, really high right now. They have scored, I think, more than pretty much every other team not named. Actually, no, they've scored more than the Bruins. That's amazing. As a team, they've collectively scored 318 goals. Monster offense. The goaltending for the Oilers has kind of been where the issue lies. This team has had some issues in net, but recently they have gone on a huge winning streak. They're 9-0-1 in their last 10, 7-game winning streak. Not a team that I think the Jets would want to face in the postseason. McDavid, Draisaitl, Nugent Hopkins, very, very deep team, very dangerous one. Not a fun opponent if Winnipeg has to run against that. All that said, facing off against the Knights is not any better, especially with the news that Mark Stone is potentially about to return. We all know what Mark Stone has done to this Jets team before. We know that he is very, very talented, a very good scorer, and an amazing creator. And should he be activated in time for the postseason, it's going to be tough. I mean, this Knights team is already very strong, very fast, offensively ambitious. They've got a mobile blue line. The goaltending, a little bit more of a question mark. But as long as the Knights offense continues to churn the way that it has over the past several months, I think it's going to be a very uphill battle for the Jets. This would be, however, a good time for Winnipeg to get some Vezina level play from Connor Hellebuck. If he is in the mood for a revenge series against Vegas, that would be awesome. We still have unfinished business from 2017-2018, and this time there's no Marc-Andre Fleury to stonewall the Jets. So if ever there was a year for Winnipeg to read the tea leaves and take advantage, it's this season. But, of course, for the Jets, I have a hard time seeing them getting out of the first round. It just seems like even if they face Edmonton or Vegas, both of these teams have the kind of offensive prowess that makes Winnipeg really falter, right? One thing that we've seen this year with the Jets is that finishing has been very hit or miss. And recently it's been more hit, but on the whole this year, the Jets scoring just hasn't really aligned with how much that they've created in terms of shot volume. And I think that has really put a dent in Winnipeg's ability to really cement itself in the Central Division. Recently, they've scored more goals, and things are finally starting to turn around a little bit after a couple of lineup adjustments, but I don't know if it's going to be enough when you're facing either Vegas or Edmonton with the sort of offensive prowess and depth that both of these teams have. It's weird to say that I'm worried about the Oilers, but I am. This Edmonton team is no joke, and they score a lot of goals. And of course, Connor McDavid is Connor freaking McDavid, man. What do you even say about that dude? I mean, he's just an absolute monster. He's having one of the greatest seasons in NHL history. I feel like he drops like a 30-point game and just no one seems to care because it's McDavid, and I think people take him a little bit for granted. But make no mistake, this Oilers team, man, they are ripping through opponents. They've beaten Vegas recently. They have beaten the Kings twice, and LA is a very good team. They've also beaten some softer opponents like the Ducks and Sharks, but again, they've also beaten the Kraken, the Stars. They've beaten the Bruins and the Sabres. Yeah, this Oilers team, man. I know that the Jets have actually beaten them recently within the past 2 months, but all I can say is I don't know. If I had a choice between these two teams, I think I'd actually still lean Vegas. I can't believe I'm saying this, but the Oilers' offense and how it's rolling recently, it does scare me. Let me know which of these teams you would want to face in the postseason. Are you hoping that Edmonton takes that first Pacific Division spot, or do you think it would be better for the Jets to face Vegas? Drop a series prediction below as well. I'm going to be an optimist and say the Jets win in the first round 4-3. It will require a game 7, and I think the Jets get it done. But let me know your series predictions, and also let me know if you think the Jets are going to clinch their playoff berth or if you think they're going to lose to both Minnesota and Colorado. Drop your thoughts below in the comment section or at my social medias at HLLivingLoco and at LO_Winnipeg Jets. For tonight's episode, though, that is going to be all the time that we have. Thanks for making Locked On Jets your first listen of the day every day. Be sure to make your second listen Game to Game NHL. Every moment, every top performance, and every result featuring expert analysis from our local experts from Locked On. Be sure to follow Locked On Game to Game on all of your favorite podcasting platforms. It is part of the Locked On NHL podcast. It's also on YouTube, so be sure to follow there as well. And as always, thanks so much for listening. Have a great night, and go Jets go.